WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and Conakry, 7 p.m. in Abuja. Good evening and thank you for staying tuned to West Africa, the Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. I am Augustine Curley.
And I am Veronica Njai.
First, the headline stories. Banjul hosts a high-level summit on security in West Africa and the Sahel.
Challenges we face are shared and that our solutions must be true.
The Ghanaian government engages South African officials over alleged xenophobic attacks against nationals.
They are saying we foreigners are taking their jobs and then we are taking their women. That is their main problem.
Nigerian transitional authorities voice conditions to resume bilateral relations with Benin.
And French Foreign Minister Barrett arrives in Togo to bolster security and economic ties. Please stay tuned for the details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Glad to have you join us. A high-level workshop on strengthening security and stability in West Africa and the Sahel is underway in Banjul, the Gambia. The two-day meeting brings together policymakers, regional envoys, and international actors to address growing threats, including terrorism, political instability, and the spillover of insecurity into coastal states. Participants, including government officials and civil society representatives, will all work to chart a more effective response to the region's evolving challenges.
As WADR Sang Donald Mendy reports, the summit is organized by the African Union in collaboration with key development partners.
Held under the theme Bridging Good Governance, Regional Cooperation and Multilateral Responses, the workshop is focused on how countries in the region can better coordinate efforts to address increasingly complex and interconnected challenges. Opening the session on behalf of President Adama Barrow, the Minister of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, Professor Pierre Gomez, emphasized the importance of collective action. He called for stronger cooperation between governments, regional institutions and international partners to effectively respond to the evolving security landscape.
Challenges we face are shared and that our solutions must be true. I urge all partners to approach these 2 days in a spirit of genuine collaboration and commit to concrete follow-up.
The West Africa and the Sahel have continued to face a surge in terrorism and violent extremism, alongside fragile political transitions in several countries. João Cravino is EU Special Representative for the Sahel.
What we are witnessing is not only a security crisis, it is also a crisis of governance, of resilience, and of confidence in state institutions.
Also adding his voice is Colonel Major Ismail Adey.
This forum is very important for the stability in West Africa. It is an opportunity for IS countries and ECOWAS members to increase their collaboration.
Meanwhile, discussions are also taking shape against a backdrop of escalating violence linked to extremist groups, particularly in the Central Sahel, where attacks have intensified in the recent years and displaced millions of people. The workshop is expected to produce practical recommendations aimed at strengthening regional collaboration and supporting long-term peace and stability in the Sahel and across West Africa. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Sangdona Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
In Burkina Faso, authorities have suspended or dissolved hundreds of local associations. In the space of 7 days, 470 of these associations operating across a wide range of sectors were dissolved by authorities in Ouagadougou. This comes less than a year after the adoption of a new law governing such organizations.
But within and beyond the borders of Burkina Faso, how should this law be understood? Here is a report by WDR's Martin Kabad, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
In the first wave, 118 organizations were dissolved, although no immediate explanation was provided in the statement from the Minister of Territorial Administration. In the second wave, however, the reasons were clearly outlined. All 359 suspended associations were cited for failing to renew their governing bodies in line with their statutes, internal regulations, and existing laws. These organizations operate across a wide range of sectors, including human rights, religion and environment, employment, food security, sports, and culture. But what does the law actually say? The measures are based on a new law on freedom of association adopted on July 17, 2025 by the Transitional Legislative Assembly and enacted a week later. The law applies to associations, NGOs, and trade unions alike. It states that associations can be formed freely without prior administrative authorization. However, certain conditions must be met, including holding a founding meeting, adopting statutes, internal rules, and documenting the process in official minutes. The law also prohibits the creation of associations with unlawful objectives or those that threaten public order, promote political agendas, or incite hatred, intolerance, xenophobia, or racism. On dissolution, the law specifies that it must follow the provisions set out in an organization's own statute. This explains the term deemed dissolved used by authorities, suggesting that failure to renew leadership bodies automatically leads to dissolution under the organization's own rules. Beyond legal grounds, authorities have also accused some of the targeted groups of lacking transparency in their funding sources and engaging in illegal activities.
A report by WDR's Martin Kabar in Ouagadougou, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And now the Ghanaian government has intensified diplomatic engagement with South Africa following an alleged xenophobic incident targeting Ghanaians in that country. Virtual videos circulating online appear to show Ghanaian nationals being attacked.
Since high-level talks began between Accra and Pretoria, South African authorities have promised a full investigation. Further briefings are expected for diplomats as concerns grow over the safety of foreign nationals in South Africa. From Accra, Nadede Tete.
The diplomatic move was initiated by Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa with his South African counterpart Ronald Lamola after the videos began circulating online. According to the minister, the footage, widely shared on social media, prompted urgent engagement to verify the situation and ensure the safety of Ghanaians living in South Africa. Michael Ishen, speaking on behalf of concerned Ghanaians living in South Africa, said hostility towards foreigners is not a new development but an entrenched issue.
This thing has been happening for a very long time. We keep on securing ourselves in this country. They are saying we foreigners are taking their jobs and then we are taking their women. That is their main problem.
Following the discussions, the South African government expressed concern over the development and pledged immediate action, including a full-scale investigation into the incidents. Authorities in Pretoria are also expected to brief African diplomatic missions as part of efforts to provide clarity and reassurance. On the ground, Ghana's High Commission in South Africa, led by Benjamin Kwashi, has been coordinating with local officials and engaging affected nationals. The mission has successfully located the main individual featured in the viral video and is providing consular assistance. Officials say the individual is safe and no Ghanaian fatalities have been recorded so far. The minister has urged calm among Ghanaians, reaffirming government's commitment to protecting its citizens both at home and abroad under President John Dramani Mahama. Both countries are now working through diplomatic channels to establish the facts around the incidents while maintaining cooperation and reinforcing broader African solidarity. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
News report reaching WADR's newsroom indicates that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the nation later today, April 23rd, amid rising concerns over xenophobic attacks targeting foreign nationals, including Ghanaians. We will bring you more details later on.
And elsewhere in Togo, visiting French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot is meeting with government officials and civil society actors since arriving on Wednesday. Discussions are focused on terrorism in the Sahel and the broader political situation in the sub-region. Discussions will also cover preparations for an upcoming humanitarian conference with a focus on international humanitarian law. Barrot and Togolese authorities are also expected to reveal bilateral cooperation supported by the French Development Agency.
The visit comes as President of Togo's Council of Ministers, Faure Gnassingbe, plays an increasingly important mediating role between France and countries in the Central Sahel. Togo recently hosted a high-level meeting on its new Sahel strategy, bringing together representatives from ECOWAS, the African Union, the AES bloc, the United Nations, and other international partners. Meanwhile, neighboring Niger said it is ready to normalize its relations with Benin. For the past 3 years, the land border between the two countries has remained closed, with diplomatic and economic ties under strain. Following the election of a new president in Benin, economic stakeholders in Niamey are hoping for a revival of relations between Niamey and Cotonou. Christopher Teacher reports.
In an interview with Nigerian television, Interior Minister General Mohamed Toumba said Niger is not opposed to a return to normal relations with Benin. He added, however, that Niamey is seeking several assurances.
Talon is being used as a proxy. There has been a change in leadership in Benin. But what matters now is a clear show of good faith. Benin should openly state that it is not serving foreign interests, particularly those of France, and that it is not allowing its territory to be used as a base to target neighboring countries.
For several years, Nigerian authorities have accused Benin of hosting foreign forces, allegedly aiming to destabilize the current regime, claims constantly denied by Beninese officials. As part of efforts to strengthen security, the Interior Ministry has announced plans to recruit nearly 10,000 personnel to boost the National Guard and the police. General Mohamed Toumba says,
These recruitments are aimed at closing the gap in our personnel. The goal is to strengthen our security coverage across the country, ensure we have enough forces on the ground, and effectively address the security challenges we face.
By reinforcing its military capacity while maintaining a firm diplomatic stance, Niamey aims to consolidate its new security strategy and reshape its international relations.
Yakuba Bibulai's report from Niamey, voiced by Christopher Aticho. In Nigeria, the country has attracted about $425 million in investment to boost local solar manufacturing. The development is part of efforts to position the country as a regional hub for renewable energy in West Africa. Correspondent Diechino Sasetu has the details.
The investment, secured in 2025, will support the establishment of 8 renewable energy manufacturing facilities across the country. Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency, Abba Aliu, says the move reflects growing investor confidence in Nigeria's renewable energy sector. He notes that local solar manufacturing capacity has increased significantly, with more projects in the pipeline. Abba Aliu adds that Nigeria is already producing solar panels locally, with some being exported to neighboring countries, signaling its emergence as a regional hub. The development is also supported by government policies aimed at attracting private sector investment and strengthening local production. Experts say the push for renewable energy is expected to improve electricity access, create jobs, and reduce reliance on imported energy solutions. The federal government continues to position the sector as a key driver of economic growth and energy transition. For WADR, Yechenu Sasetu in Abuja.
You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Banjul hosts a high-level summit on security in West Africa and the Sahel.
The Ghanaian government engages South African officials over alleged xenophobic attack against nationals.
Nigerian transitional authorities avoids conditions to resume bilateral ties with Benin.
French Foreign Minister Barrett arrives in Togo to bolster security and economic ties.
Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview and the sports news, so please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at the WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's take you to Liberia now, where the Civil Service Agency has ordered all civil servants to sign a national non-disclosure agreement by June 1, 2026, or risk being removed from the government's payroll. The policy, effective May 1, is intended to strengthen discipline, protect confidential information, and safeguard public sector integrity.
However, it has drawn criticisms from civil society groups and some political figures who warn it could undermine free speech and transparency in the country. From Monrovia, WADR's Abraham Parker reports.
The Director General of the Civil Service Agency, Josiah Joker, highlighted the significance of the newly introduced National Non-Disclosure Agreement for all civil servants, which takes effect on May 1, 2026. The CSA says the agreement is designed to protect sensitive information, safeguard the identities of civil servants, and to promote professional conduct.
The CSA is implementing this effort in collaboration with the Independent Information Commission and the Whistleblower Agency to ensure transparency, accountability, and proper enforcement. Any individual who continues to refuse compliance within 15 days will be first blocked from the payroll and subsequently removed.
However, the policy has sparked concern among civil society groups who warn it could restrict free speech and limit access to public information, potentially weakening democratic accountability. Some political figures have also criticized the move, calling it a threat to transparency and the public's right to information. Critics argue that while protecting state information is important, the NDA could be used to silence whistleblowers and deter civil servants from exposing wrongdoing or corruption. As the June deadline approaches, the debate is expected to intensify, with tensions growing between government objectives and concerns over transparency. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
On Wednesday, 4 high-profile individuals vying for the position of UN Secretary General appeared for a public hearing session at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Michelle Bachelet, Raphael Grossi, Rebecca Grandspine, and former Senegalese President Macky Sall have all made their case and now await the outcome.
But how exactly does the process of selecting a UN Secretary General progress from the public hearing stage, which concluded yesterday Wednesday in New York? The question comes as the race now moves beyond closed doors at the Security Council, where major world powers will work to agree on a single candidate. Imo Edit tells us what to expect.
The informal interactive dialogues or public hearings for candidates seeking to succeed the United Nations Secretary General have wrapped up in New York. The procedure has become a key part of the selection process since its introduction in 2016 to promote transparency within the organization. 4 candidates are in the running to replace Antonio Guterres, namely former Chilean President Michelle Bachelet, IAEA Director General Raphael Grossi, UNCTAD Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan, and former Senegalese President Macky Sall. Over several hours, each candidate presented their vision before the 193 UN member states and civil society representatives in sessions broadcast live online. The process, now open to the public, aims to shed light on a selection procedure that was once largely conducted behind closed doors. The next step now lies with the Security Council, which would hold internal consultations to agree on a candidate before forwarding its recommendation to the General Assembly. The Assembly will then make the final appointment for a 5-year term, renewable ones. While the process is more transparent, observers note that political considerations remain decisive. The informal principle of regional rotation, often mentioned, is not legally binding. The succession to Antonio Guterres is shaping up to be both more open and still deeply political.
Imo added with that report, the Gambia Press Union has expressed its openness to enter into dialogue with the government over proposed media regulations. It, however, outlined key conditions they say are essential to safeguard press freedom and independence. The position of the Press Union camps amid growing tensions over the draft regulatory framework, which has prompted concerns among journalists, publishers and rights groups about its potential impact on media operations in the country. Asatu Keita is the president of the Gambia Press Union.
So we are also open and accept to the same dialogue as been mentioned by government, but also since the Gambia Bar Association has been identified as the neutral convener of this dialogue in question. So we are also open and accept to this, but also reason why we convened our affiliates as well as our stakeholders to discuss on this, but also come up with our own number of issues and demands that we'll also be pushing forward to the table. So we'll be looking forward to the said dialogue in question.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this evening features Professor Salu John, a political scientist and lecturer at the Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar. He shares his perspective on the public hearings for the United Nations Secretary General position, which concluded on Wednesday in New York.
Now, despite the divided support for the former Senegalese president's bid for the top job at home in Senegal, Professor John believes Macky Sall's selection offers Africa and other developing countries better representation. He explains.
I'm really proud to see an African vying for this post. And we all know that Africa really needs someone there. We all know that the Secretary General is not going to be there for Africa, but at least having an African leading the UN will be something very good, because the person there will, I'm sure, will take into consideration all the different problems that Africa is facing, especially in relation to international relations, how geopolitics is going on, how geostrategy is going on, and also in helping solve all the conflict, especially in the Sahel region, and also see how to reinforce democracy. But especially have the African voice heard at the UN, especially seeing to it that African people have a seat at the United Nations Security Council. I think when hearing Macky Sall speaking, there is a sense of pride, and then it's just like making Pan-Africanism re-emerge again. And this really the sense of pride that I have. And listening to him, that I see he is someone who really knows how the UN function, and he also knows the different challenges, not only globally, but also the challenges that are relating to the one African countries are facing.
And like you rightly stated, Professor John, Macky Sall, during his presentation yesterday at the UN headquarters, did actually say what he would achieve. One of them is making sure that multilateralism thrives, and also looking at reviewing the existing financial architecture, also working to protect vulnerable countries most exposed to climate change. These are among other issues that he did mention. Do you think he can achieve all of this?
When we look at multilateralism, we only look at the concept of something that is really real. But multilateralism, the way it functions globally, is just an illusion. We only have a group of countries that are leading the world. Whenever we talk about international communities, we are under the impression that, we have all the voices of the countries globally, but it's not the case. We only have the voices of few countries that are being prevailed. But I think listening to him, we see that actually he's someone who really understands what multilateralism should be and how also it should function. And he even said in his speech He's not going to be someone who will be siding with one group or another, but he will be someone who will be listening. And I was really impressed by his capacity to make dialogue prevail, but also to listen, but also to find balance.
That was Professor Salu John, a political scientist and lecturer at the Sheikh Anta Diop University in Dakar.
Now, in the world of sports, Africa Cup of Nations 2027 is on growing uncertainty as delays raise doubts about readiness in co-hosts Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. A critical inspection by the Confederation of African Football flagged major gaps in stadiums and infrastructure, with Ugandan venues below the required standards and key projects behind scheduled. With time tightening, relocation, including a possible move to South Africa, is being considered. Uncertainty continues to build.
The countdown for the FIFA World Cup 2026 is intensifying, with FIFA releasing more tickets just 50 days before kickoff. Co-hosted by the United States, Mexico, and Canada, the tournament will feature 104 matches. Tickets are on sale on first-come, first-served basis, with more releases expected before July 19th final. Gianni Infantino says over 5 million tickets are already sold, with about 2 million still available as demand continues to rise.
And finally, Chelsea FC has parted ways with coach Lan Rossignol after a difficult spell marked by poor results. A heavy Premier League defeat to Brighton and Hove Albion proved decisive, with performances falling short despite backing from owner Todd Bowley. Chelsea has appointed Callum Mufal as interim boss until the end of the season as the club continues its search for long-term stability. That's the latest in the world of sports. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. Thank you for listening. Many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Maud Juf for the technical assistance.
Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram, and Facebook at WADR English. Coming up is a repeat broadcast of Enviroscope. I am Veronique Njai.
And I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
We thank you for listening to Newslink in Nigeria on Love FM Abuja and Darling FM Owerri. In the Gambia on Hot FM Banjul, Hilltop FM and Veritas Radio in Serekunda. Thank you for listening on Alternative Youth Radio Lofa County, Liberia, Radio Kegaman in Nimba County, and DCN Radio Riverses County. A big thank you to Radio Baft FM in Sierra Leone for listening, and in Ghana we thank Radio Pad in Damango and Royals FM in Wenchi. Thank you all for listening to